not really training you to be counselors. We're training you to come alongside people and have some skills to be able to help them go deeper into their soul. And so, and that could include a lot of things. And it really is a broader term than spiritual formation. Or spiritual directors. It's a term that can encompass a lot more things. So you can be a soul care provider by providing food, you know. You can be a soul care provider by providing whatever a person needs to be able to feel the love of God and to take their life deeper with God. So that's what you are. And so the handouts, I use that terminology so that you can get used to thinking about yourself as someone who comes alongside another and cares for their soul. And just for a little review, in the 2 weeks that we met, was it 2 weeks? Yeah, it was 2 weeks. The first week we talked about preparation for our own soul to be able to walk alongside of another. And what were the 3 main things about that? I just want, what do you do in preparation of your own soul? What do you have to make sure of?
How safe is my soul?
How safe is your soul? Yes, and what makes it safe?
Where you are, like if you're not critical or evaluating.
Yes, that you're not critical, you're not judging, you're not evaluating, but you're receiving what they bring and not being critical about it. What's the second thing?
How quiet.
How quiet is your soul? Yes. And how do we quiet our souls? Not being anxious. And how do we not be anxious? What did I do when I couldn't find you that first night?
Turn to God first.
Turn to God first and let Him quiet your soul. So whenever you're doing this intentionally, you're going to come across a lot of people who you will provide soul care for that it won't be intentional, and so you may not be able to. But even in the midst of that, you can send a prayer up to the Lord and say, quiet my soul and help me attend. You know, you can just always be aware that your soul has to be in a place of openness to the other. Okay? And the third thing was what?
Do you have the capacity to love?
Pardon?
Do you have the capacity to love one another, to love another person?
Yes, you have to, your soul has to be full of love. And so thinking about where have I received love? Where am I receiving love? Am I doing this on a continual basis? And I really need to be able to be receiving love to be able to give it. And so those things were really important. So those were the main core things that we took away the first night. Now the second night, last week, we talked about the first skill of attending, and we spent just about the whole time on attending. What was your takeaway? What do you remember?
To listen with sensitivity.
Pardon?
To listen with sensitivity.
Okay, listen with sensitivity. Okay, so having that caring part of you, listening, and a really important part. And all the things that I gave you on listening, what were some of the other ones?
Don't be distracted or do something else while you're trying to listen.
Yeah.
The person can really tell.
Yeah, you need to put yourself aside, you need to put your distractions aside, and you need to really be with them. Yeah.
So we don't know the actual thoughts of others?
We don't know the actual thoughts of others, so things we attend to, when do we know they're true?
When you say it.
When they say it, or when they confirm it in some way. And before that, it's conjecture. You know, you just don't know for sure if it's really true, but you're paying attention because it helps you to listen with more sensitivity, listen more like with wonder and mystery like a child, remember? Listen with your heart and be able to take it in and see how your heart processes those same things. So we learned a lot about attending, and I gave you a sheet on all the things you attend to, okay? So that's one from last week. We're not going to deal with that this week because we did last week, but it's there for you. And so this week, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. And this is going to be the part that you're going to probably find The most difficult, I don't know quite how to say that, other than I dropped my Bible. But this is the one that often, this isn't true of everybody, but most people, compassion does not come naturally. Now, you may think it does, okay? But I'm going to teach you a way that it probably doesn't. And so you're going to have to practice. But before we get into compassion, let me ask you one thing. Did anybody attend to somebody since last week and have some experience that they would like to share with us? Did anybody practice attending to someone? Yeah.
Yeah, just had a really good conversation with one of my friends who ordinarily doesn't open up very much.
Uh-huh.
And I just noticed with eye contact and just being present and letting him talk, you know, and attending to how he was responding, he really opened up a lot and was actually able to get some tough stuff that he was dealing with off of his chest.
Yeah, and then open up. Just the attending itself will open people up, and that's what you found out. And I was wondering if anybody actually really tried it. I should have told you to really try it.
I went out to dinner with a couple I had never met before
Mm-hmm.
and practiced it. And so, of course, they just kept talking, because you just, you know, they love to talk. So I was so good, I just sat there and lead the question. I was very proud of myself, Judy.
You know what? I don't think they love to talk. I think they loved being listened to.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah, because in our world, we aren't listened to. People don't have time to hear us. And when someone takes the time to not only give you
Yeah.
eye contact, but to give you some feedback, to listen, and to listen attentively and carefully, suddenly it becomes very safe to start talking about yourself. And it literally, we are representing God when we attend to somebody because he's attending to us all the time. And so you are giving them an experience of how God is present with them when you attend to another person like that. That's an amazing responsibility. Yeah, John.
I had this experience this week where I purposely attended to another person who had some concerns, strong concerns. And during the conversation, was the interesting part, is they mentioned a previous, or how scared they were to come into a pastor's office. And so I said, well, tell me about that. And so out came the story, and all of a sudden you could see why it was kind of a frightening deal to come and meet with a pastor. But they ended up walking away actually saying that they felt like they were heard.
Yeah, yeah. People are dying to be heard. They're dying to be known, to be listened to be cared about, to be loved. We have pretty empty hearts overall. And for someone to take time today, I know that that's one of the things I get said over and over at school with students. Students will come into my office and say, I can't believe that we can actually sit down and have time with you, you know, and that you'll take time to listen to us and care for us. And so, yeah, it's so important. And most of the people you meet are waiting for that. So practice your skills. Practice them, practice them, practice them as we learn them. So this time we're going to go into compassion. I'm going to start by reading a scripture passage out of Matthew. It's Matthew 9, and starting with verse 35. And it was really when Jesus was saying that the workers are few. And I think this is so true of this particular thing. The workers, the people in the church, the people in our world, really are very few that really know how to listen and respond and show care. There just aren't very many. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. And when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. And I just want to ask you, do you look at others and feel compassion for them? Do you see a crowd of people? Man, we had a lot to be compassionate. Were you angry when you looked at the crowds coming against America and all these different embassies?
Oh, yeah.
Or did you have compassion? What did you have? What was happening in your heart when you looked at those people? You know, those people that we saw on TV were harassed and helpless, most of them. And so they were using the only things they knew to be heard. They so desperately needed people who could look them in the face and listen. Just listen. Do you have compassion for the people that God puts in front of you? Now, if I ask you that question, you also have to think of what does it mean to have compassion? Well, if you split the word in two, barely my Bible down up there, don't follow it. If you split the word in two, come means with, and passion means I'm coming with feeling. There's something going on in my heart as I come to you. So it's Jesus, as he came to them, yes, he healed some sick. I think about all the sick he didn't heal. You know, and as he looked out on the crowds and they seemed so helpless and so needy and so wanting, that in his heart something was stirred. And when he came to them, he had great feeling for them. And so we want to be able to know what that is and to be able to do as Jesus did and have compassion for people instead of maybe reacting to them. Taking an active stance of love, like Jesus did. There were many in that crowd that disagreed with Jesus. In fact, those are the people that were going to put him to death. And still, he had compassion for them. That's why I say when you see those pictures on TV, what goes on in your heart? Do you react, or do you come with great feeling for them and what they need and feel a sense of their need? When you can do that, you're beginning to develop a heart of compassion. And I think about God, and this is so, I should probably read that passage. Romans 9. He tells us there that God has a sovereign choice as to whether to be compassionate and merciful or whether to be angry and destroy. You know, he said to Moses, he said, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. Did God give us that choice? What it was his commandment to us. Yes, love your neighbor as yourself. Love God with all your heart first, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And in this me society, this is a hard commandment. Because we love ourselves first. And maybe if enough of our needs are met and we're receiving enough love, then maybe we have enough to give to somebody else. But actually, he says no. Love God with all your heart, he will fill you. And use that not to get for yourself, but to love another. So that you can really love your neighbor as yourself. We don't have that choice like God did. because we can't see another person's heart. We don't know the choices they're making. We don't know why they made the choices they made. I find so often when I hear somebody's story, I feel so differently about them after the story is told than when they first came in. There's usually a story that goes along with their behavior. And so to be able to hear that story and listen carefully and let God develop your heart of compassion for them is so important. You might only have respect for the image of God. You know, the fifth skill we're going to learn is respect. Respect. What do we respect in another? We respect that they were created in the image of God. And that is the part that has to be awakened and made to blossom. And sometimes that's all we have, because the sin that they're practicing, the where they are, what they're doing, how they're doing it, drives us to push them away. But God created every human being in his image. They have that capacity in them. And we don't know who God has chosen. And so we have to begin with respect. And then as we hear their story, see if God builds that compassion in us. Now sometimes God will show us that there's something evil there. And that we are to deal with that evil. So I'm not saying everybody that comes in front of you is one of God's chosen. Okay? And sometimes they're there to actively work against. And I think about Jesus even then in front of Pilate. Sometimes it's good just to sit in silence. I think he heard Pilate's every word, but he sat in silence. He didn't have to react. He didn't have to respond. He had said who he was, and they have chosen not to hear. And some people that you have in front of you will choose not to hear and not to take in the compassion you have. Okay? But let's look at this a little more. And what I would like to do is take a baseline assessment of your compassion. Are y'all scared now? So I want you to take out a piece of paper. This is going to be a little bit more like school. A little bit more like school, but it's not school. So don't be afraid. Okay, and I have 13, I think it's, 13 feeling words. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to focus on each one. And I want you to rate it from 1 to 10 as to how much you can feel it. Some of these you're going to feel a lot. And some of these you're not going to be able to feel at all. And so I just want you to begin to get a sense of when people are in a place and you have to be compassionate, do you have a corresponding feeling that you know what they're even talking about? And so we're going to do this baseline compassion. And I'm going to give you a word. My watch has a second hand again, and these 30 seconds are, I did something 30 seconds last time. I'm going to do it again. And I'm just going to leave you sit in that feeling for 30 seconds. It'll seem sometimes long, sometimes short. And then I want you to rate it from 1 to 10. 10 being you feel it a lot. 1 being you don't feel it. You might have a 0. Can't feel it at all. Okay?
So when, in what context? Like,
Doesn't matter.
when we're with.
Just the word.
Okay.
Okay? The word should bring up feelings.
Oh,
Okay? I shouldn't say should. It will sometimes.
Down to a 0.
It might bring that feeling. Okay. The first one is loving. Okay, rate loving. Give it a number. Second word, jealous. Okay, rate jealous. Rejected. Rate rejected. Suspicious. Rate suspicious. Anxious. Rate anxious. Confused. Rate confused. Accepted. Accepted. Rate accepted. And go to lonely. Lonely. Rate lonely. Frustrated. frustrated, fearful, great fearful, angry, great angry, hopeful, great hopeful, depressed, I have one more for you. If you've been numbering. Great hope, what did I say, depressed, great depressed. And then do trusting. Trusting.